Hello and welcome to our presentation on the regulation of Gatwick Airport. Gatwick Airport has up to 55 flights taking off and landing per hour on its runway, with a total of 46.6 million passengers recorded in 2019. Gatwick is the least regulated of the big three London airports, since it has the least market power, and yet still has 26% of all London's air traffic. From this, it's easy to see how Gatwick faces effective competition from Heathrow and Stansted, although the airport is under private ownership. Gatwick provides services to both airlines and customers, although it's mostly airlines. Gatwick's portfolio includes a wide range of support functions designed for the airlines themselves, ranging from things like lounges and check-in desks to aircraft hangars, while consumers only pay Gatwick directly for things like parking or commission on tickets. Previously, the airport was fully regulated by the Civil Aviation Authority, or CAA. However, after the change of ownership and through the introduction of competition within the South East Airport system, things have changed. Since April 2014, Gatwick has been licensed by the CAA to operate under a new commitments framework where service levels and charges are agreed with airline customers in a set of commitments which are then endorsed by the CAA. Now we will look at why the sector is regulated.
One reason to regulate Gatwick is that externalities exist. A profit maximising company does not consider the impact of the decisions on the wider society. Hence, companies operate where the private marginal cost is equal to the private marginal benefit, giving their profit maximising price and output. The regulator, however, does take social benefits and costs into consideration and so looks to guide the company to operate where social marginal costs are equal to social marginal benefits. Therefore, we can see that the equilibrium that the market reaches is suboptimal relative to what the regulator would choose. Firstly, there are externalities surrounding the safety of the airport. These include airport security and the maintenance of runways, facilities and equipment. A private firm, which we assume is a profit maximiser, without proper regulation may decide to try and decrease costs by spending less money on the safety and the maintenance of the airport. This may yield a higher financial return for Gatwick, but in the long run it could cause problems such as reduced quality of service through delays, as well as impacting the environment. Also, Gatwick is a necessary infrastructure for the wider economy. Gatwick Airport's operation and services deliver a very significant economic benefit for the UK, with its national GDP contribution reaching 5.3 billion in 2016, which is the equivalent to 0.3% of the UK's total. However, as a profit maximising company, they would not take these considerations into account and supply less output, which is Q2 on the diagram. Both externalities mean that the outcomes from private decisions vary from the socially optimal level for airport services, and therefore proves why regulation is needed. Another reason for regulation is the problem of asymmetric information. The airport industry is very complicated due to the logistics and technology used, meaning consumers do not always have the information or cognitive ability to assess the value of goods or services that they are receiving. A regulator may be better placed than individual consumers to evaluate the value and quality of the service being provided. The use of the airport's balance sheets, cash flow statements and income statements would allow the regulator to better understand the industry and protect consumers with fairer pricing. Now we will look at who the regulators are and their objectives. The regulator is the CAA. They are the UK's independent aviation sector regulator and responsible for airspace policy, safety regulation, consumer protection and the economic regulation of airports. The objective of the CAA that we will talk about is maximising economic welfare. This includes balancing the present users wanting lower airport prices and the interest of future users with the ability of Gatwick Airport Limited, or GAL, to invest in modern infrastructure. For example, by ensuring price commitments which locks in lower prices for longer, output moves to a more allocatively efficient level, increasing consumer surplus and economic welfare. Our objective is to maximise social welfare and to ensure the stability of Gatwick Airport. They encourage investment in new and existing infrastructure. Gatwick will look to invest over £1.1 billion over the next 5 years, from resurfacing the runway to the extension of the North Terminal departure gates. Also, they hope to achieve financial and operational resilience through licence obligations and performance monitoring. The last objective of the CAA that we will talk about is how they look to mimic competition. It is important to note Gatwick faces natural competition from other London airports, but as Gatwick manages 26% of all of London's airport traffic, regulation is needed. They aim to obtain cost minimisation and therefore productive efficiency by encouraging GAL to reduce marginal costs below the price commitments set. The longer time period of the price commitments should provide GAL with a greater incentives to reduce operating expenditure and outperform commercial revenue assumptions. Also regulated by the Department of Transport, who are responsible for the UK's aviation policy. One of their main objectives is to ensure that the UK's air links continue to make it one of the best connected countries in the world and to increase links into emerging markets. Another objective is reducing the impact of aviation on the environment. These include ensuring that the aviation sector is making significant and cost-effective contributions towards reducing global emissions and reducing the number of people that are affected by aircraft noise in the UK.
The CAA found that calculating a fair price that was based on a single tilt RAB approach was the best way to constrain Gatwick's revenue. This refers to a price cap on the maximum revenue per passenger with a strong emphasis on encouraging efficient investment and, where appropriate, promote competition. The CAA's final forecast fare price was RPI plus 0.3% per year over 7 years. This constraint was intended to be in place for 7 years and will end next March 2021. Well, it is ultimately designed so that Gatwick is able to generate levels of revenues which are sufficient to finance both their operating and capital expenditure requirements, as well as provide a regulated rate of return on their regulated asset base. The RAB itself is calculated each year to represent the economic value of Gatwick's capital infrastructure. It is embedded in an RPI-X price cap regulation with a focus on representing the invested capital that Gatwick are authorised to earn a return on, and therefore by investing efficiently would be able to add to their RAB over time. The single tilt RAB approach involves the CAA determining the regulated revenue requirement. They do this by taking the sum of all forecasted costs collected from Gatwick's annual financial accounts, including the income statement and statement of financial position. This includes operating costs, capital expenditure net depreciation, and the allowed rate of return on the forecasted RAB that is determined by the cost of capital, which recognises the capital-intensive nature of Gatwick Airport. The resulting revenue requirement is then divided by the forecasted passenger numbers to produce the per-passenger maximum allowable yield. This yield is such that the company remains financially viable and can obtain financing at a reasonable cost. We call this incentive regulation because, remember, the price cap is based on predicted data, and so there is now real incentive for Gatwick to find ways to perhaps become more productively efficient by reducing the operating costs below what was predicted, or even increase dynamic efficiency by finding new and innovative ways to increase their volume of sales, perhaps through improved quality of service that will ultimately increase the number of passengers beyond what was forecasted. This is their route to increased profitability.
Who are the stakeholders considered by the CAA? The passengers of today and tomorrow must receive a high-quality service for a fair price, while airlines hold monopsony power and could simply fly from elsewhere. So prices must be right to ensure a smooth transition. These stakeholders must be satisfied, while also ensuring the airport gets a fair return on its assets.
The CAA's main priority is to deliver an output that is allocatively efficient. There are two ways in which the CAA ensures Gatwick meets the output targets: the use of the RAB approach and reputational incentive. The reputational incentives come in the form of honouring the commitments that the airport has originally agreed to. Once Gatwick comes to a mutual agreement with the CAA, they are obliged to follow through with these commitments. If not, as the second biggest airport in the UK to Heathrow Airport, this severely affects their reputation, not only with the CAA, but also their brand image. Since there are other competitor airports, such as Heathrow or Stansted, the tarnishing of Gatwick's brand image due to the failure of meeting their commitments would lead to a great loss in the number of passengers who would prefer to fly from other airports. This creates an obvious reputational incentive, as by honouring the commitments Gatwick makes to the CAA, they keep their name as the second largest airport in the country, maintaining their excellent brand image. The RAB approach is also effective, as these commitments will provide a framework to diversify the service offering and to incentivise volume growth. These commitments will encourage Gatwick to improve its efficiency, as the price is below the previously mentioned RAB price. Since price is below the RAB price, more customers will demand Gatwick services, therefore leading to an increase in output and encouraging Gatwick to improve its efficiency to ensure they make healthy profits. In addition to meeting their proposals, RAB pricing also ensures that Gatwick focuses on efficient investment on new and existing infrastructure by maintaining aircrafts and runways.
In conclusion, the Civil Aviation Authority uses a fixed price control of RIPX that embeds the RAB approach. This incentivises Gatwick to pursue the objectives of maximising economic and social welfare, as well as mimicking competition and striving for sustainable operating practices. Thank you for watching.